Hi, everyone. This is Joel coming to you from our palatial and luxurious virtual headquarters here at KSN Property Management. And this is one of a series of videos that we are doing on tips for do-it-yourself landlords, because we know that there's a lot of you out there, and hopefully you can learn from some of the lessons that we've had to learn over the years. On this particular video, we're going to be talking about some tips for how to go about screening your tenants before you accept them. This is one of those times where I'm going to have to remind you that I am not an attorney and I cannot give you legal advice because the area of tenant screening in some cases may touch on some issues of the law. So I want to make very clear I'm not an attorney. So to start off with, I strongly recommend that if you're going to screen tenants for your property, that you take advantage of a third-party service to do it for you. You really don't want to be sitting there on your own trying to look at someone's ID, trying to get their social security number, trying to verify their income. You don't want to be doing that kind of thing on your own. You want a third-party service to do it for you because they're set up to pull this information in a lot more detail than you're going to be able to do on your own. So I'm going to start off by showing you a couple of services that are out there that you can use. So let me share my screen. Okay, so the first place that I would recommend that you take a look at is a service called SmartMove. It is provided by the TransUnion Credit Reporting Service, and you can find them at mysmartmove.com. And typically, the third-party service like this can look at things like they've got it all listed here: their credit checks, their criminal background, evictions, verifying their income, verifying their identity. SmartMove has a unique thing called Resident Score. It's kind of a proprietary number that they have to help you evaluate tenants. So TransUnion SmartMove is available. Another one is if you go to Zillow on the Manage Rentals section of their site, they've got a place called Applications. So you can go through Zillow to look at applications. When we first started off, we were only managing a few properties. TransUnion SmartMove is the one that we started off using. So Zillow or TransUnion SmartMove are two places I'd recommend you take a look at. A couple things to be aware of. Before you can start accepting applications through these third-party services, you're going to have to go through some kind of a credentialing process yourself, because these services turn over a lot of sensitive personal information such as social security numbers, credit histories, criminal histories, things like that. They're not going to just turn that stuff over to anybody. You're going to have to verify who you are, verify that you are in fact a legitimate landlord. If you have set up an LLC for your rental property business, they may need to see copies of your business registration, things like that. But you're going to expect to go through some sort of a credentialing process. Also, as far as payment is concerned, typically you don't have to pay anything out of pocket yourself. These services make money by charging the tenant or the potential tenant. They have to pay the application fee. And in some cases, they will give you an option to set the price that you charge, and you might actually generate a little bit of income off of the application. You know, in other words, there's what the service charges to actually pull the background information, and then you can add a little bit on top of that so that you make a little bit of money off of it, because you are going to have to spend some time on your own taking a look at the tenant's application and making a decision. One thing I want to add as we're getting towards the end of this, is a fairly short video. Very good idea for you to write down in advance what your policy is going to be for accepting applications. And typically your policy is going to want to include things like what is the minimum credit score that you want to look for. You could also make decisions based on things like income level, which could either be based on their gross income or their net income. You might even include things like, what kind of a debt to income ratio are you going to be looking for? But you really need to write these things down because that helps keep the emotion out of it. And as I've mentioned before, it's very important to remember that this is a business, and you don't want to take things personally. And you are going to get some hard luck cases, especially when you're showing your property. You might have somebody coming through and they're going to have some sad story about, almost like a country song. My dog died and my wife took my truck and lost my job, And they're really going to pull at your heartstrings. And it's very important in these situations that you have something written down so that when you're making a decision, and particularly when you're communicating your decision to the tenant, you can refer to your policy and say, you do not meet the criteria specified in our policy for accepting tenants. Last thing that I want to recommend in this video is when you're making these decisions about your acceptance policy for tenants, good idea to maybe consult with an attorney in your area, because there are laws in some cases that will dictate what you are or are not allowed to take into consideration when you're screening a tenant for a rental property. And these laws and regulations can vary from state to state or even from city to city. So you want to make sure that you're doing the right things and that you are in fact looking at the data that you are allowed to take into consideration in your area so that you don't violate the laws and get yourself sued. So that's it for this video. And again, this is Joel with KSN Property, and we're not monsters. And if there's ever anything that we can do to help you, don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're on Facebook, and you can find us on the web at our website, ksnprop.com. And if you're watching this on our YouTube channel, don't forget to subscribe so that you will get notifications of new videos.